Matthew here from MiniBoardGaming.com, and welcome to another episode of Rules You Get Wrong. And by rules you get wrong, I mean you as in you guys, and also you as in me. So, rules we get wrong, it should really be called. This is in response to the Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report, Warriors of Chaos vs. Tomb Kings. There was a lot of comments on there. A lot of them are repetitive, so I didn't obviously repeat the same problems or things that people pointed out. But it also is a good chance for me to talk about my Tomb King army and plans that I have for it. So, without further ado, let's start going through some of the comments that I have decided to respond to, which I've typed out and printed off. Gits Masha says, I could be wrong about this, but other than the Juggernaut, because it is stated in the rules, I thought the best possible armor was 1+. And yes, you are correct. In this game, it never really mattered, because I never really modified the 0+ armor. But yes, the best possible armor save that you can get in Warhammer Fantasy is 1+. Now, for you 40k players out there, you might be thinking, well, why would you have a 1+ armor save? Because that would be impossible to fail. The reason is because Warhammer Fantasy modifies armor saves rather than ignoring them. In 40k, if a weapon, its AP value beats or matches the armor value, or the armor save of the target, it just negates the armor save altogether. Whereas in Warhammer Fantasy, the higher the strength of the weapon, the more it negates the armor save. If you're a strength 4 weapon or higher, you subtract from the other person's armor save. Strength 4 is a -1 to the armor save, strength 5 is -2, strength 6 -3, and so on. So let's say you had a 3+ armor save, and you get hit by a strength 5 weapon, that 3+ becomes a 5+. So it's important to have a 1+ armor save, because even though a 1 will always fail, if somebody hits you with a strength 4 weapon, you still get a 2+ armor save, because it modifies it from 1+ to 2+. So, but in the rules, it does state that you can't go to a 0+. Even in the case of the Juggernaut, you cannot go to 0+. Mercy of Spades said, wow, I'm pretty impressed. I don't care for fantasy at all, but Matt's terrain and their possible strategic use really makes this game look appealing. And I thought so too. It really changed the dynamic of the game to actually use the special rules for the Warhammer Fantasy terrain. I've always hesitated because it's hard. The movement trays, I like and I hate movement trays at the same time. I like them because you can move so fast. You get 50 Tomb King warriors and it's done their movement. But then when it comes to charging, when it comes to going around terrain, they're a big pain in the butt. So it's nice to see that this terrain really added to the game rather than made it too difficult. Zalbarg said, where you had your horse archers instead of charging the marauders, it might have been more effective to shuffle back a bit, get around to shooting, and then get a stand and shoot once they charge to hopefully kill them all before combat, or at least reduce their numbers enough to sway combat in your favor. Only problem with that is that Tomb Kings can't stand and shoot. They always have to hold in response to a charge. But the idea is still good. If you look at it, I was still able to kill 3 out of 5 of his Marauder horsemen with just the 2 of the horse archers that were left. So if I could have, say, knocked out 1 or 2 more of them, when if I had shuffled back and then shot at them and knocked a couple of them out, then not only would it soften them up for the next round, but his Warriors of Chaos would have continued to be distracted, because he was distracted. He actually turned them around. I don't think he needed to use his whole unit to try to take on these skeleton horse archers, but it worked as a good distraction, which is why you do the whole scout move thing. And it would have been good just to kind of keep him tied up for another round. As it was, he was able to just turn back and march forward and get ready for combat. So, good suggestion. Half of it's a good suggestion, the other half you can't really do. Inspector Morgan says, in fantasy, you have to do panic tests immediately, not at the end of the phase like in 40k. Didn't make a difference here, but just for future reference. But great report, really enjoying it. It's a good point. Forgot to do that. Silent Civilian, both players need to be ignoring the 1-inch rule, which means you cannot be closer than 1 inch of a friendly or enemy unit unless you are in combat with them. Would have made a difference to Matt moving all his units through the center. I know you guys do not play a lot of fantasy, but it's a small rule that can mean a big difference. That is very true, because I usually place my chariots right beside the warriors, and then the warriors march up and then the chariots can charge. So, good point. We'll have to watch for that. Harlequin78 says, with ranks and command on this knights, that Bone Giant charge is very hard to win. I realized that afterwards. I still had a chance if I hadn't whiffed the roll so bad, and if I had remembered his Thunder Stomp, which I forgot. He actually only lost combat by 3. And so if he made 1 out of 5 of his attacks on a 4+, like that's pretty bad luck. So if he had made just 1 extra attack, that would have killed another one, so it would have won by only 2. And then if I had remembered my Thunder Stomp, which is D6 automatic strength 5 or strength 6, whatever he is, hits, I could have easily tied combat there. And if I had won combat, even just by 1, and he had failed that leadership, then he could have overran that entire squad, and that entire game would have gone differently. So it was a bit of a gamble, probably more in the Warriors of Chaos' favor than it was in mine. But I do agree, the Bone Giant has a hard time because needing to roll 4+ to hit, because his weapon skill is 3. So most things that he's going to fight, he will be hitting them on a 4+. So which kind of sucks. Okay, Loves, I'm not going to say his whole username. I think the Giant is a monster, so if he does, and Thunder Stomp is also another way monsters deal with lots of enemies. Best part is that it auto hits. Doesn't matter if the enemy is weapon skill 1 or 10. Yes. Scary, I thought you only move D6 inches forward when you become stupid. That is correct. We were doing it incorrectly, where we were just moving the model up its full movement, not marching or anything, instead of rolling a D6. In this case, it didn't make a difference. Everything that went stupid, that failed its roll, really didn't play in the end of the game. Cow says, also, is there a way someone can tell me what overkill in a challenge does without saying just go get the rulebook? I know this was already explained by somebody else in the comments, but for those of you who didn't see it, basically when two units collide in a close combat, the champions can issue challenges. And when they issue a challenge and the other side accepts, then we always take them out and put them to beside it so you can kind of represent them in challenge. You don't have to do that. And they can only fight each other. Nobody else can help fight those models. And if one of them kills the other, but does an overkill, meaning it does more wounds than necessary, those extra wounds do go towards combat resolution, where normally they wouldn't. So if you hadn't challenged and you targeted the champion who has 1 wound and you managed to inflict 3 unsaved wounds on him, those 2 extra wouldn't count towards combat resolution. But in a challenge, they do. So it's another reason that you challenge. So that is what overkill is. Yoda Hill said, I think the curse of a dying Tomb King or Prince damages only 1 unit. That is normally true. Basically, the rules state that the curse affects the unit that killed them. And then it specifically says, in the case where it's impossible to tell exactly which unit killed them, for example, in the case of the unstable rule, killing them because they lost combat, then all of those in the combat that affected that result are damaged as well. So it's really good and bad at the same time when a Tomb Prince or Tomb King is killed as a result of combat resolution in a multi-combat. Because in that case, everybody involved in multi-combat on the enemy side is affected by his curse. In fact, that Tomb Prince's curse did a ton of damage. It wasn't enough to really make a difference in the game, but it kind of makes me want to just bring a lot of Tomb Princes just unupgraded and toss them out front as independent characters and let people charge them. And it's just like, it just does more damage than they actually do in the game. And finally, Marzilia says, you should expand this army, Matt. Get some Tomb Guard and Necropolis Knights. Get Dave to start Fantasy 2. More fantasy to the people. I agree. I've been playing with the same army for long enough. I'll admit I don't like fantasy as much as 40k and War Machine, as you can probably tell. Everybody say hi, Mike.
Hello.
But I have been enjoying it more the more I've been playing it. And I do want to get some of the new Tomb King stuff. So hopefully in the near future, you will see me expand my army. I've been thinking of adding more chariots, more warriors, and then also a lot of the new units as well, because they look really awesome, so why not? In fact, the Screaming Skull Catapult, I definitely want to have 2 of them. Having 1 is hit and miss, but you have 2 of them, then they'll probably perform a lot better. That's kind of the way I work with most of my armies, even with 40k, is that if something is vital, but it's not like multi-hitting, like for example, a catapult which fires 1 AoE, that can be devastating if it hits, but can do nothing if it scatters, then it's good to bring 2 of those, because then on average they will do better. Kind of like Tervagons in 40k, how they spawn gaunts. If you bring 1, they're destined to roll doubles in the very first turn and do nothing for the rest of the game. You bring 2, one of them will usually roll doubles in the very first round, and the other one will usually make up for it. Just the kind of statistics that work there. It doesn't always work that way, obviously, it's just random, but it can work that way. So that's what I want to do. I do want to add a group of Tomb Guard and Necropolis Knights, look really cool. I'd love to add another Screaming Skull Catapult. I'd love to expand my chariots, get some of the special characters as well, because they have some really neat abilities, and just overall be able to play different Tomb King armies. Like for example, in the army that I brought, I really didn't want those 16 archers. It's just that I had to bring them. I would have rather replaced them with, I don't know, another couple chariots or something else instead of them, and maybe another catapult as well. But since that's all I really had, there wasn't much for me to choose between. So thank you for everybody who left your comments. Of course, leave your comments below what you think about the rules and interpretations of them, if there's anything else that you think we did wrong. And make sure that when you watch battle reports and you see that you think that we did something wrong, make sure you comment it. Now, you don't have to do it in a style that is like It's really bad criticism. It's more constructive criticism. And I'm finding that people are doing the right kind of tone now in their comments. It's not like, you guys are idiots, you're doing this. It's more like, hey, for your next rules you get wrong, you should talk about this rule that you got wrong. And then I'm able to kind of counter some of them, or actually discuss how we did do it wrong and talk about strategies at the same time. So stay tuned for more Rules You Get Wrong. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming.